the season ended today, the Falcons and Colts would be in the postseason, but both have lost 3 of their last 4 and are desperate for a win. The Falcons and Colts coverage begins Sunday at noon Eastern on ESPN Radio.
Welcome into First Take. As you can tell, Skip, Steven, and Molly are off today, filling in, hopefully admirably. Myself, Todd Grisham, ESPN commentator Will Cain, and ESPNW's Kate Fagan. Kate, I understand this is the last time we're going to see you on ESPN television the rest of the year?
Yeah, I'm going to write a book.
Okay.
I'm writing a book on a story I did for ESPN, Split Image, about Madison Holleran, who died by suicide, a pen runner. So the book is about social media and technology and mental health, and I'm taking a couple months to do it.
Slacker.
I'm basically going to a cabin by a lake.
Right.
And sleeping and occasionally writing.
Ernest Hemingway. All right, well, we'll get right into it. We start with Monday Night Football. The Texans hand the Bengals their first loss of the season. You heard what J.J. Watt had to say about Andy Dalton. A pretty funny line, I thought, but Dalton didn't find it humorous at all.
I'm disappointed in him for the integrity of this game. You know, I have a lot of respect for him. He's a really good player. And so there's a lot of kids and a lot of people that look up to him. And for him to make comments like that, he's just showing that, that's acceptable to do that kind of stuff and say that kind of stuff. And so, it's disappointing for one of the best players in this league to come out and say something like that. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I guess Dalton can't laugh at himself. Will, what did last night say about Andy Dalton?
I agree with you, by the way. That's a funny joke. Daisy Red Ryder BB gun, red rifle, that's funny. Unfortunately, Andy Dalton didn't find it funny, and what it tells us, I think more than the game outcome, is that Andy Dalton is not very confident, at least in his football ability. In fact, he is flat out insecure about his football ability. How else would you read so negatively into that joke that you're the Daisy Red Ryder, that he turns you, that J.J. Watt and the Houston Texans turns you into the Daisy Red Ryder? I don't think Andy Dalton believes in himself. Confident people can take jokes. And that's a shame, Kate, because the Bengals, and for that matter, Andy Dalton, are pretty good. Andy Dalton has the 4th highest QBR in the league this year. The Bengals are an excellent team. One of the best defenses in the league. We know now they're 8-1. They have a legit chance to go all the way, to be one of the teams standing at the end of the year playing in the Super Bowl. But in order to do that, they need a quarterback who believes in himself. Now, we all know that Andy Dalton is not Tom Brady. He's not Aaron Rodgers. And he's told that over and over. The media is constantly banging that into his head. The Bengals win in spite of Andy Dalton, is what the media narrative is. But the one person that needs to not believe in that, the one person that needs to tune that out, is Andy Dalton. He needs to believe that he's capable of competing against Tom Brady. He needs to believe he's capable of competing against Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl. And the fact that he can't take this funny little joke from J.J. Watt says to me he's insecure about his abilities. And he doesn't believe in himself. And ultimately, when it comes down to a game in the playoffs or the Super Bowl, the world will be doubting you. Your teammates will need to know you believe in yourself. They're going to need to believe in you as well. And this suggests to me that Andy Dalton, and by the way, his playoff record, cannot be a guy relied upon in those situations. I hope I'm wrong. I like Andy Dalton. I like the Bengals. But this right here says, I think, a lot more than just he's sensitive and can't take a joke. It says he's insecure.
Wow.
I feel bad about myself now. I can't take a joke.
I'm very sensitive to
Are you?
what Will just said. Well, I disagree. One, I don't think it's that funny. I didn't think the joke was that funny to begin with.
But you told me a moment ago you didn't know what a Daisy Red Ryder was before.
True, maybe I don't have enough context about what the joke is supposed to mean. Although I did watch A Christmas Story, so I get it. But I don't think it wasn't funny, meaning I'm offended by it. I get what J.J. Watt was trying to do, and I don't really understand Andy Dalton's response. But I have to think that maybe he didn't have all of the context there. He was posited this question by another reporter who put it in fine context, but he didn't at that moment hear what J.J. Watt said in full. It was also immediately after the game, when even if you're not sensitive and you have a thick skin, after you've just lost on Monday Night Football 10-6, played poorly, and your first loss of the season, it's not the absolute best time to try and deconstruct what an opponent has said about you, and specifically personally about you, when you're talking about the color of his hair, and probably something he's had to deal with his whole life. I'm not suggesting that doesn't mean he's sensitive. He certainly is. I don't find anything wrong with J.J. Watt's comment. I'm hoping that once Andy Dalton sees the full breadth of what J.J. Watt said and actually puts it into the context before, the comment before, what he said, and then afterward, maybe his response is a little different. But I can't go so far as to say it's a referendum on Andy Dalton and who he is as a person, his ability to win football games. If you go back throughout sports history, you've got plenty of athletes who are wildly sensitive. That doesn't mean that they can't win ball games. I don't know if Andy Dalton is going to be able to win the Super Bowl this year or win a Super Bowl in his career, but how he responds to J.J. Watt's comments is certainly not a referendum on the fact that he can maybe or maybe not produce in the playoffs. I mean, look back on the history of athletes. The best athletes are often some of the most sensitive. Don't tell me Michael Jordan wasn't one of the most sensitive guys out there. I'm not comparing Andy Dalton to Michael Jordan. I'm simply saying that to say that he responds in a sensitive manner and that means that he can't produce in crunch time makes no sense to me.
Well, first of all, I don't think J.J. Watt impugned Andy Dalton's character, nor do I think he impugned his hair color.
You love the word impugned, by the way.
I don't think it had anything to do with his hair color. Red is both in Rifle and in Red Rider, so the red is the constant here. It's about his football abilities. And actually, J.J. Watt didn't make an assessment on Andy Dalton's ability as a quarterback. He said we turned him into the Red Rider tonight. So what he's sensitive about is his ability to play on that night against the Houston Texans. Now listen, guys do this to each other. I don't know how much experience you've had with this, but hey, you're thinning out a little there back there in the back. I see that. Or put on a few pounds, haven't you? Depending on how the guy reacts, you know whether or not you've hit any truth. If a guy can laugh it off, you know it doesn't bother him. But if a guy really, really responds negatively, not only do you know, yeah, you have packed on some pounds, but you know it and you're sensitive about it. To me, Andy Dalton's reaction here reveals he believes the same thing J.J. Watt does, that he was turned into the Red Rider, that he was a BB gun and not a rifle. He believes it, regardless of what J.J. Watt believes it. Guys like Michael Jordan took criticism and turned it into fuel. You're right. They paid attention to all that stuff, but they used that as fuel to be better, not because they were insecure, but because they were confident. They wanted to prove you wrong. Andy Dalton has a chance. He can prove me wrong and everyone else wrong. I hope he does, because I genuinely like the guy. But I think his sensitiveness, his sensitivity to this right here suggests he's not very confident about himself.
But there's a lot of athletes who pretend to be overly confident, and we'll talk about one of those later.
Right.
And actually they're masking something. That's actually what fuels them, is that weakness. So yeah, you're right. If you're going to tease the strength, is what people say. If you're teasing the weakness, somebody reacts. You see and the way Andy Dalton reacts. I totally agree with you that is his weakness. That the Bengals and probably Andy Dalton right now have a chip on their shoulder. They haven't proven themselves.
And he needs to not believe that. He needs to believe he is better than a Red Rider. He needs to believe that he is a Red Rifle.
Sure, but
if
just
the Bengals
because
are to have any chance, that's what they need from him.
Sure, but there's not a direct causality between him being a sensitive guy and also going forward this year not being able to produce for the Bengals, especially when you put it into the context of when and where and how he responded to this.
I think it would have shown more confidence if he just laughed it off. I thought it was funny.
I have a 4-year-old daughter. She comes to me crying all the time that her sister called her a name, and I say, you need to toughen up. Is that basically what you're saying? Quit crying and toughen up? You're better than this?
Well, I think that's part of what I'm saying, but actually, I do think it's deeper. I think he needs to be confident in himself. Confident people laugh at jokes. Insecure people take them personally and suggest this is bad for the kids and you should be a model for the league and you shouldn't make completely benign jokes about other human beings in this league.
But there's some psychoanalysis happening. But a lot of the best athletes are insecure. So I guess I'm balking at the statement that it leaps to a referendum on the production that Andy Dalton can have going forward.
But you mentioned Michael Jordan. If somebody said to Michael Jordan, he played like a 6th grader tonight, he wouldn't be defensive and say he should have said that. He's like, oh, really? Here's my points per game. Here's what I've done to you head-to-head. He would do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, Andy Dalton would not have hidden behind the NFL shield, right? He wouldn't have said, like, if you get teased on the playground and you're like, the teacher's going to get mad at you, like, that's not the way we want our athletes to respond. And I do think if Andy Dalton puts it all in context going forward, maybe he'll back off of that a little and be like, well, I saw it in full. I don't agree with what I said right after the game. I just don't think that means that he's just like wildly insecure all of the time. I think it's a little piece that he hit on.
Just when it matters.
Just when it matters, just right after a Monday Night Football game.
And he's certainly frustrated at a 30.7 QBR last night, the second worst game of his season. Let's talk about another player that had a disastrous game. Peyton Manning threw 4 interceptions. League sources are telling our Adam Schefter that Peyton has a torn plantar fasciitis in his left foot. The team announced that Brock Osweiler will start Sunday against the Bears and that Manning won't dress. Here is Peyton.
I'm disappointed that I'm injured, and certainly, like I said, one day after, as you could expect, disappointed about the loss yesterday. Just got to get healthy overall. I got a couple of different issues I've been dealing with. I just got back from getting an MRI on my kind of that rib cage area, so I haven't gotten the results of that. But I think the week can help me, try to get healthy in some of the things that I've been dealing with, and hopefully I can use it to my advantage.
He sounds like he's falling apart. He looks like he's falling apart.
He's playing like he's falling apart.
Should this be it for Peyton Manning?
I think this year should be it for Peyton Manning. Absolutely, as soon as he's healthy enough to play this season, I would want him back on the field. As a Bronco fan, as somebody who used to live in Denver and mildly enjoys when the Broncos win, I think he should play again this year. Now, if we broaden that question to, do I think this season should be it for Peyton? Absolutely. I mean, look at his numbers right now. He's got 59% completion percentage, which is the lowest number he's had since 1998, his rookie year. So, I mean, the regression there is extreme. 5.3% of his passes are being intercepted, which is the highest of his career. We don't need to argue necessarily over these production numbers because they're just not there for Peyton right now. And a lot of that I do get is Kubiak trying to do this zone blocking and the running game. But, I mean, Peyton's still attempting 35 passes per game. So it's not completely, oh, okay, well, we're running the ball now, and that's why your numbers are down. His efficiency is down. The numbers are down. I don't think he should play again. And that's coming from a perspective of somebody who would want an athlete. And, like, I felt this way when I competed. I didn't want to be broken down. I didn't want to be on the downward slope. When I was done, and it's certainly not at that level, but I appreciate that in an athlete. I don't like when I see athletes continuing to play past when they're their most effective. So for Peyton, when there's really, I don't know that he's playing in a Super Bowl quality capacity right now, and you add on top of that debilitating injuries. I mean, we're talking injuries that in 10, 15 years, it's going to be really hard for him to be able to be like pain-free, right? You add all of that up together, I don't see the point for him in continuing to play.
Can we just start with something? I believe you committed a Cardinal football fan, sports fan rule. Did I hear you call yourself a Denver Broncos fan?
No.
Oh, I thought you said as a Denver Broncos fan.
No, I said I used to live in Denver.
She gets mildly excited when they win.
Before my friends.
Okay, all right. I wanted to make sure you weren't committing sports bigamy because I do know that you are a New York Giants fan. And you must be monogamous to that fact.
Oh, my God. Yes, of course.
Okay, good.
Knicks,
we agree.
Giants, Mets. You can't love two teams.
We agree. I thought for a moment there that I saw a character flaw in you, and I was wrong. You are pure.
You pressed it, though.
Pure. Oh, I wasn't going to let you get away with it.
Because you're a Texans and a Cowboys fan, right?
No.
That's what I thought.
Period.
Huh.
Cowboys.
All right.
Mavericks. Rangers. Longhorns.
Good for you.
Now back to Peyton for a moment. Should this be Peyton's final year? No. There's no way this should be Peyton's final year. I'm fully aware of how poorly he's played. I'm fully aware that he's thrown 9 picks, 1 for every game this year. But this is Peyton Manning, a guy who a year ago had the third-rated QBR in the league, the third-rated quarterback in the league just last year. This year he is dealing with a sore rib, sore shoulder, now a half-torn ligament in his foot. This guy is playing banged up, but still he is Peyton Manning. Can he heal? That's the question. Can Peyton Manning heal? And if he can heal, and I think the answer is yes, then when he comes back next year, he will be very good. He doesn't need to be Peyton Manning from 5 years ago. He doesn't need to be Peyton Manning from 10 years ago. He needs to be better than Brock Osweiler. He needs to be better than, I don't know, half the quarterbacks in the league. And I have every belief that Peyton Manning next year could be a top half of the league quarterback, could be better than Brock Osweiler. So if you're the Denver Broncos ownership, if you're John Elway, if you're Gary Kubiak, you want Peyton Manning back, and Peyton Manning should come back. Nothing here is threatening him for the rest of his life. No injury here suggesting he won't be able to walk or that he has a long history of concussions. Peyton Manning's health, his career, his teammates, his ownership, everything says come back next year. You're 1 year removed from being the third best quarterback in the league.
Well, real quickly, you said 9 interceptions. He actually has 17 interceptions. 9 touchdowns.
9 straight games. I'm sorry. 9 straight games.
Am I helping your point or his point? I don't know.
17 is 8 more than 9, which is very
it leads the league also.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned 1 year ago, he was top 3 QB in the NFL. And then you listed a very long number of injuries that have happened between then and now. And if you look at the history of NFL players, that injury list is going to keep growing. That's the main concern here. So do I think that Peyton Manning can be, the question is not, can he be a competent NFL quarterback next year? Can he be one of the top 15 to 20 quarterbacks in the NFL? Sure, of course I think he can be. But the larger question there is whether Peyton Manning wants to be the 18th ranked QB in the NFL. Maybe he does.
Well,
if he wants to be, I mean, he is now, right? But if he wants to make the actual choice coming back next year with that long list of injuries, knowing he's going to be mediocre, possibly better than mediocre, then sure. Go for it. I don't think that should be.
The argument isn't him coming back and being a mediocre or slightly below average quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's not him coming back and being a quarterback for a team that is not even in contention. This is the Denver Broncos, one of the best defenses in the league. What is their record? 7-2 right now? The Denver Broncos have a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl. Let's not forget, when John Elway won 2 Super Bowls, that wasn't the John Elway that was lighting up the league 5 years earlier than that, 10 years earlier than that. That was John Elway on the decline of his career. Could Peyton Manning not do that with this Denver Broncos team? I think he can. I think that you are shoving him out the door entirely too early to say you've had one season with a litany of injuries, fresh off a wonderful season, and you need to hit the road. Let's find out if injuries accumulate. Let's find out if he can't play next year healthy.
But you're talking about a Denver Broncos, those back-to-back Super Bowls that they won, where Elway was throwing a lot fewer passes than Peyton Manning is on pace to throw this year.
He had Terrell Davis, too.
Yeah, and he had a running game and a blocking scheme that was gobbling up yards. Whatever the Denver Broncos were supposed to be doing on the run game this year, it ain't happening.
That's true.
And Peyton Manning is having to carry way more of the burden than Bronco fans were promised as to how he was going to ride off into the sunset. So you can't really compare teams that have great defenses like the Ravens in whatever it was, 02, when they won with Trent Dilfer. I believe it was 02, maybe 01, when they won, when they don't have a quarterback that is doing that. Peyton Manning is not the kind of guy who's just going to be your stable quarterback.
Social media still buzzing about Ronda Rousey's shocking loss over the weekend via brutal knockout to Holly Holm. Rousey was roughly a 20-1 favorite entering the fight and had basically convinced the world it was not a matter of if, but how quickly she could beat Holm. Here's a quote from Nancy Armour from the USA Today. Rousey fell victim to the same trap, caught up in her own hype. She took the over-the-top arrogance to the extreme, demeaning her opponents, manufacturing vendettas, threatening to beat up Kim Kardashian or anyone else who annoyed her. Rousey captured the sporting world's attention with her bad girl, I can beat Floyd Mayweather, greatest female fighter ever attitude. But now that we look back, did that attitude actually hurt her in the end?
I think we got to back it all the way up to how she got to where she was. And part of that is because she's playing by a different set of rules as a female athlete. She can't just be good at her sport. She has to also manufacture headlines. She has to, every time she approaches a fork in the road and can take the more explosive, confrontational route, or she could take the good girl, say the right thing route, she kind of had to take the explosive route because she needed to get attention. She needed to build a platform, and I thought she was really smart about how she did that. I mean, she won a medal, an Olympic medal in judo. We didn't know who she was. Obviously, moving into a sport where it's also validating this type of confrontational behavior was helpful to her. I don't think she would have been saying the same things if she was in a basketball or a tennis. A lot of it was the climate of what MMA and UFC brings. But, so my point is that if she was a male athlete, she could just say whatever she wanted, whether that was explosive or not, and being good at her sport would have gotten the headlines. She couldn't do that. She had to make the headlines. So in a lot of ways, we saw her manufacturing these interactions with Floyd Mayweather, with the Kardashians, with almost everything, with Bieber, too. She had to do that. Now, I do think that once she built her platform, she kind of kept her foot on the gas there. And I don't know if that was habitual. I don't know if she kind of got into a rhythm of like, I'm always taking that one road. I'm always taking that one road. She already had the 1.7 million Twitter followers. Everybody was tuning into her matches. I don't know that she needed to go the extra mile with Holly, but I do know that that is how she built her platform. And so I completely understand that that was habitual for her.
You know, the conversation after this fight largely revolves around why has there been such a glee in Ronda Rousey's loss? Why have people been so ready to jump on this and say, see, she wasn't everything she was built up to be? You point out, well, she needed to take this road to draw attention to herself, that she needed to hype things up in order to achieve this status in the athletic world. But then the lesson should be clear. If your goal is look at me, if your goal is attention, be prepared for the kind of attention you are going to receive. It will come with the positive, and it will come with the negative. And what Ronda Rousey is experiencing this week, what people are saying this week, is a direct result of the look at me she performed for weeks. Now, I think it's interesting the words that you used, that Nancy Armour used. You said she had to manufacture headlines with the Kardashians. Armour said that she was caught up in her own hype. Here is why people are responding so gleefully to her loss, because they don't like being sold a lie. And Ronda Rousey's excellence, or not, that's not fair. Ronda Rousey was excellent. Ronda Rousey as the world's greatest female athlete, Ronda Rousey as somebody who could beat Floyd Mayweather, was a lie. And so when people hear that over and over, I think they have a natural reaction to that, a natural negative reaction to that. They gravitate, I think, perhaps naively and hope, that they gravitate towards the truth. And Ronda Rousey, and not just her fault, by the way, external forces made up the lie. Dana White, for the sake of his organization, for the sake of his sport, built her up bigger than she was. The idea that she could beat Floyd Mayweather was absurd. And she played that up, that she could take Floyd Mayweather. And people wanted to believe that for a variety of reasons, including the fact that it would be really awesome if a female athlete could whip a male athlete, especially one that has domestic violence issues, right? Who, by the way, hypes his own stuff beyond reality as well. That would be such a sweet little modern story of justice. But the problem is, it wasn't true. Ronda Rousey was great. She was not the greatest female athlete of our time. She wasn't the greatest female athlete on the face of the earth. That's a huge insult to people like Serena Williams. She wasn't even, as it turns out, the best female MMA fighter. Todd said earlier in the tease, she was the baddest woman on the planet. No, she's not the baddest woman on the planet. Holly Holm has very right claim to that right now today.
I don't think we can call it a lie yet.
Was it true or not true?
Certainly a dent has been put into this mystique. I don't think anybody was ever saying that she was never going to get beat. I think we like the spectacle of watching it, and I think we will like the spectacle of watching the rematch between Holly and Rousey. I don't think it's an out-and-out lie to say that she was one of the greatest female athletes, or I don't know why I'm using past tense, is one of the greatest female athletes. A lot of great athletes take losses.
But the lie is how, you have to admit, Kate, the lie is how highly it was built up. It was sold to us. She participated in this. Could she have ever beaten Floyd Mayweather, honestly? Was that ever going to happen?
If she can beat Floyd Mayweather?
Yes.
No, of course I don't. And I'm also not a proponent who thinks like women can play in the WNBA. But the reason she said she could, and this gets back to my original point, is that spotlights exist on male athletes. So when Mark Cuban said Brittany Griner could play in the NBA, that's because the spotlight is on the NBA, so of course they're going to entertain that because they want to jump into that spotlight. The same thing was happening with Rousey there. When people were putting spotlights on certain things, she wanted to be a part of those conversations to build up this brand. Now, I think there was a little bit lacking in terms of the depth of quality of MMA fighters that we weren't talking about enough, and certainly the progression in its evolution of women's MMA. It's kind of like 50 years from now, I'm assuming there will be a wealth more of MMA fighters, and Ronda Rousey will be seen more as like a pioneer who played and fought at a time where the depth wasn't there. But all she can do is fight in the moment she's in. So I don't think that completely distracts her. I think it's a little much to say she's a lie at this point. Certainly.
Well, it wasn't true.
Well, what wasn't true exactly? That she could beat any human anywhere ever? If you really believed that and didn't see that that was part of a UFC MMA hype, well, then you're kind of responsible, too, for buying into that and being a little gullible.
I think a decent parallel for Ronda Rousey right now is Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, for years, was sold as the baddest man on the planet, one of the greatest boxers of all time, perhaps the greatest boxer of all time. And I don't know if you've seen the latest 30 for 30 on Chasing Tyson, but right there, under his nose the entire time, was Evander Holyfield. The truth was, Evander Holyfield was the best fighter on the planet during that entire time. And Mike Tyson was way overhyped. Ronda Rousey, fairly similar.
What's better than all pumpkin everything? Everything you need on GoPhone from AT&T. It gives you unlimited talk, text, and data usage with the first 1.5 gigabytes at high speed. Plus, it's only $40 a month after a $5 auto refill discount. AT&T, mobilizing your world.
First payment is $45. $5 discount applied to monthly rate plan charge upon enrollment and auto refill. After first 1.5 gigabytes, get data speeds up to 128 kilobytes per second. Additional charges and restrictions apply. See store for details.
The Cowboys have lost 7 games in a row, and Greg Hardy continues to add to the negative headlines. In a story first reported by Fox Sports and confirmed by ESPN and others, Hardy was late for work last Thursday and missed most of the morning meetings that day as the Cowboys prepared for the Buccaneers, a game that Dallas lost 10-6. Kate, should the Cowboys finally just say enough is enough and cut Greg Hardy?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be right back in a minute.
Break?
Yeah.
Well, let's start from the overarching belief that I don't agree with the fact that the Cowboys signed Greg Hardy in the first place. I don't know why we need to make room for Greg Hardy in the NFL. I think we've had a lot of discussions about how with concussion problems and guys retiring and in any team at all, it's kind of like an assembly line. All right, bring in the next guy. We're still going to love football. So I don't understand then why that doesn't apply to Greg Hardy. Like, okay, that brings something negative into the NFL. Why do we need to make space from that? So there's that overarching belief that I've had from the moment Jerry Jones signed Greg Hardy. But I do understand that the NFL is a balancing act, and it always has been a balancing act. And the balancing act is distraction versus talent. And we see this play out all the time in the NFL. We saw it with Terrell Owens when he was doing push-ups on his front lawn. That was okay because of the amount of talent he brought to the wide receiver position. We saw it with Michael Sam. You can debate whether you thought he was talented enough to be in the league, but those GMs were weighing the distraction versus what level of talent he did bring coming out of Missouri. Now you look at Hardy right now. Where is that balance? Considering you got a 2-7 football team. Yeah, he's been back for 4 or 5 games. He's playing fine, right? He's got an interception. He's got a few sacks. He's making some tackles. I get it. But then you pile down the distraction level, added with the Deadspin report 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. To that, numerous altercations with teammates, being late, constant headlines, the pressure that Jerry Jones, whether he feels pressure or not, who knows, he kind of just does what he wants anyway. But when you start piling up one side of the scale versus the other, to me, it tips in the direction of why is Hardy in the league still?
Well, I think there is a contingent of people out there that are represented by the opinion you just gave, which is summed up pretty simply the way you started. You don't think Greg Hardy should be in the NFL. You don't know why the Cowboys signed him. And basically, that has determined the outcome of this analysis for you. You never wanted him there in the first place. So, yeah, the Cowboys should cut him today. But that has no bearing on, granted, a list of things that have occurred with Greg Hardy during his tenure with the Dallas Cowboys, including silly dust-ups over his Twitter handle, whether he was late last Thursday when he was sick, whether he was late again this Thursday, whether he got into a fight with DeMarcus Lawrence on the sideline, whether or not he said something rude or inappropriate, whoever's characterization about Giselle, Tom Brady's wife. All of these things have been made into mountains, when on their own, they're molehills. Now, why have they been made into mountains? Because you didn't want him there in the first place. Now, I'm of the opinion that no matter what industry you're in, whether or not you're a plumber or you're a professional football player, a criminal conviction rarely says you no longer get to participate in that vocation anymore. Rarely. With the fact that Greg Hardy wasn't even convicted, I think it's really, really, I don't know what's going on when people suggest Greg Hardy shouldn't be in the NFL. It's not because I condone domestic violence. Of course I don't. It's not because I forgive Greg Hardy. I don't. If he's guilty, I do not forgive Greg Hardy. But I do not think that also means he has no place in the NFL. And I think that people who, all of these little incidents that come up, it seems like on a weekly basis with Greg Hardy, it's all going back to that. Really, that's what this is about. He was late for Thursday's meeting. Well, you know what? That's just window dressing. That's Christmas ornaments. It's little music down to the chorus of which perhaps you, Kate, and many people want to sing, which is shouldn't be here in the first place. And those two issues should be completely different. What he is to the Dallas Cowboys, whether or not he's a distraction or he's an aid to that team, whether or not he's late to meetings, that should be the merits for Jerry Jones and Jason Garrett to decide whether or not he's helping the team. And it's wholly separate from whether or not he should be in the NFL at this point.
A couple things. If you don't condone what he did, how are you condemning it then? if you start by saying I don't condone it, but then everything you're saying is defending his spot in it, like in what way are we as a society or media or when we're talking about this actually taking the step to condemn it?
We can condemn it with our speech. It happens to be one of the most powerful things still to this day, while we have it, the most powerful things we have in this country. You don't have, the choice is not either Greg Hardy should never play football again or I love domestic violence. That is a false choice that neither I nor anyone should ever be put in a position of having to choose between. It's whether or not Greg Hardy should be able to participate in his vocation has no bearing on whether I think what he did is wrong. I'll use my words right now, my speech. If he is guilty of what he did, and certainly the Deadspin report and the preliminary court trial, which was then overturned, suggests he did have culpability there, can be condemned with my words. If I can put a similar ridiculous scenario to you, either you say Greg Hardy should be taken, his U.S. citizenship should be taken away, or he should spend the rest of his life in jail, or you condone domestic violence. How would you respond to that?
Okay, two things, though, in addition to that. We just talked in the last block about Ronda Rousey and the fact that what she did was going to create scrutiny. She had to deal with that. She knew that what she did was going to mean that every other little thing she did was more scrutinized. That same theory applies to Greg Hardy. And another thing, when you suggested that I've started at this conclusion to begin with Greg Hardy, where like no matter what he does.
Did you not?
No, because if you look at Ray Rice, I don't feel the same way. It's not that I started with one conclusion and then I'm unwilling to change it. With Ray Rice, I do think he deserves a second chance, but I understand that he's an older running back. I understand the reasons that are keeping him there. It's not like I condemned him and then I'm like, you don't get second chance. My point here is that with Greg Hardy, if along the way there was reason to overturn my initial thinking, I would have overturned it.
My only point is you started with the conclusion that Greg Hardy should not be in the NFL, so all these things having to do with whether or not he's late to meetings, that's just window dressing for you. They're not being evaluated on the merits.
There's a scale, and he's piling onto one side of the scale. I'd be willing to say, if he wasn't piling onto that side of the scale, well, look, I get what the NFL is. It's distraction talent, and Greg Hardy's way talented.
On your scale,
but he's actually putting more. He wasn't tipped. He could have earned his way back.
All right, let's move from the Devil to the Cowboys Angels. They've lost 7 games in a row, but guess what? According to certain stories, Tony Romo could be back this week against the Miami Dolphins. Can he be the savior that Dallas needs and lead them to the postseason somehow, some way? You have admitted that you're a Cowboys fan. Do you believe that Romo can rack off, 7 wins in a row, go 6-1 and get it done?
Let's start by the fact that this entire topic was Will just wanting to talk about how Romo was going to save the Cowboys. So please.
I think Romo is primed to become the league MVP, perhaps one of the greatest MVPs of all time, rattling off 7 victories, taking the Cowboys to the playoffs, something, by the way, that has never happened. No 2-7 team has ever went on to have a winning record. Would be wonderful. I don't think it's going to happen. They've lost 3 leads and had to tie and 2 more in the fourth quarter. Tony Romo doesn't play on the defense. They've lost 5 games very winnable in the fourth quarter. Tony Romo doesn't play safety, doesn't play D-line. He won a few of them, not all of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, obviously we all know quarterback position is the most important in the NFL, but it's not the difference between 7-2 and 2-7. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks get knocked out for seasons.
But will he have that Willis Reed effect where he comes out, the defense goes, let's rally around it, we can start winning games?
Wow.
I'm sorry. Was I supposed to be quiet? I don't know.
Do you really believe this, or were you just positing this question to me?
I
don't think that that's what's going to happen. Because I don't think the problem with the Cowboys is emotional Tony Romo momentum that they need. I don't think the deficit is some sort of spark that they're getting from missing their leader. I think the deficits are pretty tangible and fundamental to not being that good of a football team right now.
I'll say this. I don't think they have to go 7-0. He has to go 6-1. 8-8 will win that division.
Well, what about the MVP? I think 7-0 if you want the MVP.
7-0 for the MVP. You're right.
Okay.
9-7.
You see his eyes gleaming.
Yeah.
He's like a teenager driving for the first time. Johnny Manziel has played relatively well for the Browns at quarterback, and yesterday his head coach, Mike Pettin, praised his performance against the Steelers, where he passed for a career-high 372 yards, but added he was not prepared to put Manziel ahead of Josh McCown on the depth chart. Basically, when McCown gets over his injured ribs, he is the starter. What say you? Should Manziel be the starter for the Cleveland Browns?
Clearly, based solely on how you evaluate your investment. The Cleveland Browns invested a number 22 pick in the first round in Johnny Manziel. And do we know yet what Johnny Manziel is, what he can be, what his ceiling is? I don't think we do. I've heard guys like Chris Carter on this network say he's already seen enough. Johnny Manziel has showed nothing that would suggest he can be an NFL quarterback. But I would suggest you need to see more. You might as well find out, because one thing you do know when you're evaluating these investments is Josh McCown is not the quarterback of the future for the Cleveland Browns. Now, the coach of the Cleveland Browns has many different things he has to factor in, such as whether or not he can keep his job, whether or not he needs to win a few more games to keep his job, what his locker room thinks. Are you letting go of the season? Are you saying we're done? They are 2-8. But if you start Johnny Manziel and not Josh McCown, does that say the season is over? He has to factor all those things in. By the way, he also has to factor in, will Johnny Manziel be disciplined by the NFL? Do I name this guy my starter, and in 2 weeks from now, he has to serve a suspension from the NFL? That would be a little awkward, again, to yo-yo it back and forth. He has to factor all those things in. But ultimately, I think Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Browns, has to say, I got to know what we invested in. I got to know where our money was spent. Because I got to know if we're going to move on or this guy can help us in the future. And the only way to find that out is to put him on the field and see if he can play. Johnny Manziel should be starting the rest of the season if the NFL will allow him to.
I agree with you that we as fans feel like, and I don't think we have, seen enough of Manziel to know whether he can be an NFL QB. And certainly I trust the opinion of a lot of these NFL analysts who are saying they don't think that he is an NFL QB. But something about the way that the Browns are talking about him suggests to me that they feel like they've already made a decision.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just told that Jay Glazer sent out a tweet that says that the Browns have made a decision that Johnny Manziel will be the starter for the rest of the season.
Glad they're listening to me. There we go. I'm glad they listened to me.
No, but I agree.
Well, it's just a tweet now. Just a tweet.
No, I mean, I think that's the right decision. I think it's the right decision, and for a lot of the reasons that Will said, in that, he had one start his rookie year, he's got a couple starts now, he hasn't played much this year. I don't think as a fan or somebody watching the NFL, I have enough information to say, can this guy play in the NFL? I was saying that it felt like the Browns kind of were really reluctant up until that tweet, and especially with what Peyton has been saying about him, to name him the QB as if they internally feel like they've decided something about him. So I feel like whether they have or haven't, it's either at 2-8, play him to see if you're right that you need to take a QB in the draft coming up and maybe another first rounder. And if you're wrong and he proves something to you, well, that's good too, because for them at this point, it's win-win playing Johnny. I mean, prove it to your fans. If you think he's not good enough because of what you've seen in practice, well, then prove it to them by playing him and showing it on the field.
From an ownership perspective, you're absolutely right. It's win-win. If he turns out to be an NFL quarterback, you've got one. If he turns out not to be, you need to move on. But from Pettin's perspective,
right,
it's not necessarily win-win. If Johnny Manziel neglects to win another game for the rest of this year, Mike Pettin might also not have a job. So I understand what he's doing, but again, you have to think about this from ownership's perspective, and you have to deal with certainties. We're certain of only one thing in this equation. We're not certain whether or not Johnny Manziel is an NFL quarterback. We're not certain whether he's not an NFL quarterback. But we are certain that Josh McCown is not the quarterback of the future for the Cleveland Browns. So that option should be off the table. Go find out the uncertainties at this point. Go find out what you have.
You would hope, but you would doubt, knowing the Cleveland Browns, that kind of communication was happening between ownership and coach. That, look, you're 2-8, you're worried that if you go 3-13, you're out of here, so you're trying to fight to 5-6 wins with a mediocre quarterback? Let's take that option off the table. That would be good communication between owner and coach, but historically speaking, at least with these people in power and this coaching staff, I would doubt that kind of communication is taking place.
It looks like they might have.
Possibly.
And isn't it more than just I'm picking a player, you're more picking a philosophy. It's almost like the head coach has to swallow his pride. When you put Josh McCown out there, he's running this play. When you put Johnny Manziel out there, you're like, go get him, buddy. You kind of take yourself out of the equation. He's almost putting the entire offense in Johnny Manziel's hands, and that's kind of a scary thought for a coach, as you said, that may be on the hot seat. All right, we're going to finish the show with a game of over-under. I will say a statement, and you'll tell me if it's an overstatement or an understatement. Start with you, Kate. The Patriots remained unbeaten with a come-from-behind win over the Giants. The Giants are the biggest threat to the Patriots winning the Super Bowl.
It's a wildly true statement. It's a dead-on statement. I absolutely think so, and it has a little bit to do with the fact that I am a Giants fan, so I don't want that to be too muddled. Also, you find out Cruz is out for the year, Victor Cruz, but I think the Giants just picked up Hakeem Nicks. So that's a great addition for Eli to throw to.
That's a real scale tipper.
JPP is back. And, of course, I mean, for me, this is a historical belief, right? Like, every time the Giants win the Super Bowl, they beat the Patriots, and they also seem really mediocre during the regular season. So for the way I feel right now, my team's pretty mediocre, and the Patriots are undefeated, and we played them really well. That seems to me like setting up the pieces toward a Giants Super Bowl victory.
I have to admit, I thought it was a massive overstatement until you mentioned that they'd signed Hakeem Nicks. And wow, now that's completely changed what I thought. It's, of course, an absurd overstatement. The Giants, are they even going to be in the playoffs? I mean, if they go 8-8 and the Cowboys go 8-8, they have down the division record. But that neglects the Carolina Panthers, the Arizona Cardinals, all kinds of other teams that are real threats to the Patriots, not the New York Giants.
Oh, so you went rational on me, is what you did. It's fine.
Vikings will shut down the Packers this weekend and run away with the division.
That is an overstatement. Clearly, the Vikings are very good, but their record, they still have Atlanta, Seattle, Arizona, and 2 games against Green Bay. Green Bay's schedule is not near that difficult to finish out the year, and people are completely overreacting right now to Green Bay. Yes, they lost 3 in a row, but I think in the end it'll be Green Bay at the top of that division. Vikings will be in the playoffs. They'll be good, but it's a little silly to say they're going to run away with that division.
Right. Well, understatement, although I'll pull back on the run away with the division, but I do think they're going to beat the Packers, which is why I'm going with that. I think Aaron Rodgers' numbers actually, even though he's having a year that we think is bad for him, they're actually better than they really even should be. I mean, if you look back on the whole season, he got so many chunks of yardage on free plays where there's a penalty and he reeled off 30, 40 yards. They haven't had that in the last month, which is part of why you're seeing this complete dip in their offense. So it feels like, even right now, that Packers offense isn't good, and it's even better than it actually is. So I have concern for them, and I think the Vikings are going to beat them.
Mark Sanchez will start for the Eagles this weekend versus the Bucs. The Eagles are better off with Sanchez as the starter.
Overstatement. No. I mean, especially after that pick in the end zone last week. I mean, that's the kind of thing that Sanchez is always doing, that just rips the heart out of your team. Also with Bradford, no, he wasn't lighting the world on fire, but he was kind of finding a rhythm with Chip Kelly's offense, and I think he was heading somewhere that could be way better for the Eagles than what we saw from Sanchez.
He was headed to below 500 is where he's headed. His record as an Eagle quarterback, below 500. Mark Sanchez's record, 4-4 as an Eagle. It can't be worse. Look, Mark Sanchez, I don't know if he's going to be better, but he can't be much worse.
I thought in Chip Kelly's offense you could just stick a broomstick back there and they'd be fine.
That's what we all thought,
That's
right?
what we all
Now,
thought.
were we better or worse than the usual crew? What do you think?
Oh, don't ever ask that question.
I know this. Let's see your shoes.
I'm going to look at my Twitter.
Let's see these kicks. Your last TV appearance of the year. Fair feedback.
Right? I'm going to check out Twitter right now.
I want to show you. Look at these shoes.
Hey, college football fans, I'm Ivan Maisel. On the latest Championship Drive podcast, we break down what could have been a Pac-12 breakdown and look at the long, successful career of Gary Pinkel. Come listen to us at ESPN.com/PodCenter.
If the season ended today, the Falcons and Colts would be in the postseason, but both have lost 3 of their last 4 and are desperate for a win. The Falcons and Colts coverage begins Sunday at noon Eastern on ESPN Radio.